Hey everyone, welcome to our course inside of Unity AI, where we are going to be using an MCP server to build a first-person puzzle game. So what we're going to be doing is using an external tool such as Claude Desktop in order to actually connect to Unity and then run its own AI commands to help us build a game. So the first thing we're going to have to do is figure out, well, how do we actually set up the MCP server, which hopefully should not be too complicated. And then from there, we can go through prompting and how we can use it to help us build a very basic first-person puzzle game. So to get started, the first thing you're going to do is go ahead and choose the Universal 3D template when creating our project, and then you're going to go ahead and give it a name. And then from there, we can jump into Unity and first of all, install the AI packages and then connect the MCP server. So now here we are inside of our project, and our next step is to figure out how do we install the necessary AI packages so our MCP server can connect to Unity and we can run commands externally. So in order to do this, what we're going to do is make sure we're on a newer version of Unity. In this case, we're on Unity version 6.5. And then we're going to go ahead and look for a tab at the top left that has a little star and says AI. From there, you're going to go ahead and click on it, and then you're going to say agree and install Unity AI. So this goes ahead and installs the packages for this project specifically, and then we can use their AI tools inside of this editor. So one thing I should note is that I believe you do have to sign up for a seat through Unity in order to use this tool. But since we're using an external API or an external LLM to make changes to our project, we shouldn't have to expend or use actual Unity AI credits in order to make our game. So again, there will be an option where Unity will have credits that you can purchase on like a monthly plan or a weekly plan. But luckily in our case, since we're using an external service, we shouldn't be using any of those credits. In the event of creating assets though, that is usually set to internally Unity AI only, so then that would use credits, for example. So again, you can kind of mess around once everything is set up, and then you can figure out, well, how the payment structure works, and then, yeah, what you can use via external sources for free, and then what requires built-in Unity tools and credits. So here we are, now that we have the package installed. To confirm that it's actually working, we can go ahead and select the drop-down. And in this case, if you've never used it before, you might need to manage your account and add a seat for yourself if you haven't actually set up your Unity AI account, etc. But otherwise, there should be an option to open the assistant. So in this case, this is the native built-in version for interacting with our Unity AI tools. And in this case, you can go ahead and select various models to work with. So again, we're not going to be using this version, but I just want to show you that there's various options that you can choose from, and then you can go ahead and add new agents with API keys if you want credit-free options. So again, if I go ahead and chat with it using Codex, it won't use any Unity credits, but if I go ahead and jump into the Unity Lite version, that means they're going to be running their model locally on their end, and as a result, it will go ahead and use your credits as you ask it to program for you, change settings, etc., etc. But either way, we don't really care about this right now. What we're focused on is the actual MCP server. So in order to actually figure out how to connect the MCP server, we go down to the Edit tab at the top left, and then we go ahead and jump into our project settings. And then inside of our project settings, we are looking for our AI tab. And if you go ahead and scroll down to the bottom, or I guess not scroll down, but at the bottom of our AI tab, there is an option for Unity MCP server. So now we can go ahead and get rid of the tools, drop down quickly, and then there's an option for all of the integrations that are available. So as you can see here, there's one for Claude Code, Windsurf, Cursor, Codex, Gemini, etc. That means we can open up Claude Desktop or Claude Code in this case, and then we can actually go ahead and connect to it with an external app, which I'll show you soon. So again, you won't have this enabled initially, so you can go ahead and actually just click configure or enable, and then you should be able to actually connect to it inside of our external tool. So again, once that happens, we should get an option that says connect to clients, and it should pop up in here. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is jump into a new Claude Code session, inside of our desktop app. And then in this case, all I did was went ahead and added a folder. And for the folder that I added, I just added the actual Unity project. So I went into my projects folder and then just selected the folder and gave it full reign over everything inside of it. That means it can go ahead and add scripts. It can go ahead and try to create assets, anything like that. Since we give it permission to mess with our that specific folder, then it can go ahead and just have more freedom in what it can accomplish. So now we need to figure out, well, how do we actually connect it? All we have to do is simply ask. So we can say, can you try to connect to Unity through MCP? Something like that. And then what it's going to do is run an internal tool, check to see what is available to connect to, and assuming that everything is configured, it'll say right there, the Unity MCP tools are loaded. Let me test the connection with a simple command. So again, it's going to go ahead and try running a command, and hopefully we'll get it connected successfully. So again, sometimes this doesn't work on your first try. What you can do is just try enabling and disabling the MCP server on the Unity end. And then as you can see here, we get a little pop-up inside of Unity that says there's a new connection. We of course want to allow it. And now we have an accepted client that is allowed to mess around inside of our project. So now if it doesn't work, you can go ahead and disable it inside of Unity and try again, or you can try pinging it multiple times in here. And sometimes it just runs the wrong command and just needs to keep trying a couple times to get everything situated. So with that in mind, I think that's going to more or less do it for this video. One thing we should more or less try to do is just test, is our MCP server actually working? It says it's connected, but can it actually do something? Can you try to place a cube at 0, 0, 0 inside of our scene? So we're just going to give it a very simple command, and then we're going to hope that it's able to, actually place it in there. So in this case, it's going to ask us to always ask for permission to do something inside of our file system. So that is something that you will have to make note of. And there you go. It says it ran a command through the MCP, and then it created a cube. So then we come back, and there you can see a cube is actually placed inside of our world. We didn't actually have to do anything inside of Unity. It was built solely on prompting. So before we wrap up this video, I just want to touch back on the actual Unity MCP server settings page and where it says tools. So this is where we actually define the permissions that the MCP server are allowed to use, but there's a little bit of nuance in here. So when we made our cube, I'm assuming it ran the command like asset generation, generate a cube asset, right? And then we go ahead and scroll down, there is a very generic option called Unity run command, and I believe this one exposes a lot of other commands. So for example, create script is not enabled, but if I go ahead and jump into Claude Code, it will make me a script even though it's not enabled. So I'm assuming this run command feature exposes a lot of these other features, and then it goes ahead and runs them anyway. So it's like an overarching permission that is allowed. So either way, if you do run into an error where it says, hey, I can't do what you want, please enable the permissions, this is where you go ahead and find it. So maybe you want to edit an audio clip and the run command or the general run command feature doesn't allow for that, then you just go ahead and enable it. Perhaps you have to restart your project or restart MCP for it to fully enable or fully recognize that this change happened, but then you should have no more issues with respect to permissions. So again, I'm not going to change anything right now, but if we do run into errors down the road with respect to permissions, this is where I'm going to go ahead and change those settings. But with that in mind, I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video when we get started with our game. Thank you. Hey everyone, welcome back to our course where we're going to be building a basic puzzle game. And now that we have our MCP server set up, I guess we could probably decide now what do we actually want our puzzle game to be. So since it's a first-person game, I think I'm going to be really focused on making a small puzzle game based around movement. So I think the basic idea for our game will be we'll have some form of map that has two floors. So like a bottom floor, like a default floor, and then a roof floor. And then the idea of the puzzle game is that the character can use gravity or inverse gravity in order to stick to the roof or stick to the floor and move around. And of course, the puzzle aspect is trying to figure out, well, where do you actually switch gravity? How do you get to the end without falling through the map in the event that you switch gravity at the wrong part? So either way, before we can even jump into how to work on that and how to use Claude MCP to accomplish that, we need to make ourselves a character first that can be controllable, and then, of course, first-person viewable. So in order to get started with this, I just have a basic cube 4 that I put in here, but we'll go ahead as well and create a new object, and we'll make it right now a basic capsule. And then from there, we'll set its position to 0, 1, and 0, so it's right in the center. And then we can go ahead and name this guy player. And then of course with the player, we need to figure out what do we need to attach to it in order to see as well as move around. So the first thing we need to figure out, of course, is how to see. And whenever we make a game inside of Unity, there already is a camera component that is default used when you start the game. So what we can actually do is just drag that onto our player component, and now it'll have a camera that can be used inside of it. So now we can go ahead and grab our camera as well, and then we can drag it. I guess maybe we won't make it third person, or sorry, we won't make it first person right now. We'll just go ahead and make it third person for the time being, because we will later have to make this pill shape invisible. Otherwise, the camera inside of it will not be able to actually see the outside world. So yeah, we'll go ahead and just leave it as is for now. And then you can see if we go ahead and just run this game very quickly, we will be able to, of course, just see the behind portion of the camera. So then again, if we're leaving it in third person for the time being, we could probably lift it up a little bit and maybe even concern ourselves with angling as well. But again, we just want to get onto moving now. So in order to get used to moving, we can go ahead and take a look at where it says the input system. So this was already made for us when we made our default project. And if we go ahead and take a look and we set the control scheme to keyboard and mouse, which is what we're doing for this video, you can see that there's already keybinds set up for us. So if we go to WASD, it's going to release a 2D vector whenever we press down one of these keys. So usually it's corresponding to an X and a Y coordinate. So if I go ahead and press the W key, our X coordinate will likely be 1, and then our Y coordinate would be 0. So then we could go ahead and grab that data and then move them forward. Same thing for S, the X coordinate would then be -1. And then A and D would no longer mess with the X coordinates, it would instead mess with the Y coordinates, or whichever plane I guess it is, to move left and right. And then, yeah, we can just go ahead and grab those values and then move the character corresponding to what key is being pressed down. So now we need to figure out, well, how do we actually do that? Well, we have to go ahead and grab our main player, and then we have to go ahead and attach a controller. So we're going to go ahead now and just remove the capsule collider, because I believe the controller will have that incorporated as well. So we don't need two colliders. We can go ahead and select add component and then look up controller and then add the character controller inside of here. As you can see, there's nothing we're really going to change for the time being, but it's going to help us with collision when we are moving around. So this brings us to our next step, which is then how do we actually detect movement or detect buttons on our keyboard and then translate that into actual movement. So in order to do that, we're going to use scripting. So what scripting is going to do is essentially look for our input system, and then it's going to figure out, or I guess the input system is going to deduce what button is being pressed down. And when it does push a button down, it's going to output those 2D vectors. With those 2D vectors, we can translate that into movement inside of our actual game. So we're going to go ahead and make a folder here for scripts, and this is where we can go ahead and test out Claude MCP in its entirety. So what we're going to go ahead and do is go into Claude right here, and again, I just tried logging a hello world script earlier, so don't worry about that. But we're not going to have any big fancy prompts. We're just going to kind of wing it, because I feel like when you are making a game for the first time in Claude or Unity, you're going to not have a great idea about the perfect prompt. So we should just go ahead and describe exactly what we want. We have a character called player, which is simply a pill with a controller attached to it. I guess a character controller. We want a script that will detect when we push WASD and translate it into movement. And then we can go ahead and say, well, we already have an input system created, so then we can go ahead and define that as well. Input system defined. And then we should also say something about the mouse. We would also like it if we can adjust the camera and look around based on mouse movement. So then we go ahead and give this a second to deduce what we're actually asking. It might go ahead and ask us a question as well, but first it's inspecting the scene to understand exactly what's going on. Overall, it's a pretty basic scene, so hopefully it doesn't use too many credits, but as you can see here, it's already used 600, which is quite a lot, all things considered, considering it hasn't done anything yet. So again, now it's found that there is a player controller, a main camera, and a new input system is present. So again, now it's going to go ahead and write the script, and then I'll go ahead and cut to when it's complete. So here we are back inside of our project. The only thing I changed since the cut was simply adding the scripts to the actual scripts folder. And then I also added a wall just to detect collision, because of course we got rid of that capsule collider. So if we go ahead and jump into what Claude did, it actually did quite a lot. So it went ahead and checked like we discussed, and then it had a little bit of an error, and then it said we now have a script, and it automatically attached it to our player. So it has WASD movement, gravity, mouse X and Y, and then it hides the cursor on play. So again, it gives us some exposed fields in the inspector, but the one thing that really stood out to me is that it automatically attached the script for us. So again, it might have not done this for you. So you could go ahead and grab that player controller, then all you have to do is actually just drag it on top of where it says player. So again, you can see I have two of them now, so you can just go ahead and get rid of them, or get rid of one of them. So in this case, you can go ahead and actually take a look at the script, and you can see there's some parameters that we can change without actually going into the code, such as our actual move speed, the gravity affecting us, the mouse speed, and then the vertical look clamp. So again, in my case, I might reduce the mouse sensitivity, for example, but we're just going to go ahead and give this a whirl, and hopefully we don't need any edits. So since LLMs, like Claude Code, are non-deterministic, you might not have the same results that I just had. So you might have to refine the code in order to get the same behavior, and that's just because LLMs, again, are non-deterministic, and the same prompts or the same ideas will always yield, or will sometimes yield, different results. So again, as you can see, we can press the A key, the D key, the S key, and the W key. And likewise, I can also move my mouse around and actually look at my surroundings. It looks a little bit weird right now, or feels a little bit weird right now, because the camera is supposed to be inside of the capsule. But again, we just wanted to test out basic movement, and we can do that for the next step. So we can go ahead now and grab our camera, and now we can change the position to be 0, 0, 0, and maybe we can move it to be 0.9 or something, like we're looking from the top part of the capsule. But now the capsule itself is going to be blocking the view of the camera. So in order to fix this, you could go ahead and jump into the actual mesh for it, and then you can set it to be equal to none. So then again, we can go ahead and press play, and then in theory, we should be able to not see anything, and now we're in a nice first-person view. And likewise, I still can't run into the walls because the mesh is still being rendered. We just don't have the actual visual to work with. So yeah, all it took was a simple prompt and honestly a couple minutes, but in theory, based on how powerful this MCP tool is, you probably wouldn't even need to make this main character called player and then attach the camera. It could probably do all those steps for you as well. We just made its job a little bit easier. But again, you can go ahead and just try experimenting with how much it can really do. You can give it absolutely nothing to work with, and it could probably come to the same results that we just came to. So either way, I think that's going to do it for this video. We now have basic character movement implemented, and now we need to figure out, well, what is our next steps? How do we actually make this a puzzle game? How do we actually flip the gravity? And of course, how are we going to, maybe we have to figure out what button or what mechanic will be used in order to flip the gravity. Is it going to be a button? Is it going to be just a hotkey? These are just some questions we're going to have to ask moving forward. So with that in mind, I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video when we tackle these topics. Thank you.